So happy to welcome you back to Rooted in the Caribbean, our Women in Leadership series. My guest today is Natasha Broomfield-Reid, and she is the founder and director of Diverse Matters and is responsible for the design and delivery of diversity and inclusion solutions across several sectors. And this includes training, audits, policy development, research, management and leadership development, advice, and support. Natasha has over 25 years' experience working within the diversity and inclusion field. And prior to setting up Diverse Matters, was head of equality, diversity, and inclusion for victim support. Natasha led the organization to become a Stonewall Top 100 employer and also achieving the Leaders in Diversity and Investors in Diversity accreditation from the National Center for Diversity. And the charity was the first national charity to achieve Leaders in Diversity status. Other diversity and inclusion roles that Natasha's held over the years include Head of Development for Equal Approach and Head of Diversity and Inclusion and Wellbeing for law firm Mills and Reeves. Due to her vast knowledge and experience in this area, she has had the pleasure of developing and delivering a wide range of programs to companies nationally and internationally. Natasha is an experienced guest speaker, facilitator, chair, and has also held several positions, including chairing regional and national panels within public and voluntary sector. Please welcome Natasha. Hello and welcome back to Rooted in the Caribbean, our Women in Leadership series. And today, my guest is Natasha. Natasha is, again, someone that I met through the pandemic. And, when friends become really dear friends. And so I'm really, really excited for Natasha to talk you through her journey as a woman in leadership. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you. Thank you, Dominic. Happy to be here.
So, my first question, tell us about your roots. Where are your family from? What is it about your history that you'd like to share with us?
Okay, no problem. So, this one's probably nice and easy because both my parents are from Jamaica. So, mum was from Kingston. Dad was born in Montego Bay, but brought up around Mandeville, Manchester sort of area. So, how have they influenced me? Well, I mean, it's really good. I've never really thought about it that much, but a few things really. My parents were the first of their generation to come over to the UK. They faced many challenges on the way, as you can imagine. I think my mum came over, I think they both came over in like the 60s, early 60s. And so the challenges they faced on a day-to-day in terms of, sadly, racism, discrimination, and, as growing up, we always were aware of that. We were aware of the challenges they went through. Notwithstanding all those challenges, my dad had his own business. He was a building contractor. My mum's a nurse, and she went up to the highest level as she can. I say the highest level without being management, because mum's like, I like doing the caring, not the management. I was like, okay. Anyway, she used to train half the managers who then people became, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think because I've seen, that, nothing goes, it's not easy. Put in the hard work, the tenacity, it will get you places. So when I, for example, set up, my business, Diverse Matters, I remember a lot of people saying to me, like, are you scared? Why are you doing that? And I was just like, I know it sounds really simplistic and like quite idiotic. I was like, what's the big deal? But I think because I've seen my dad have a business, and don't get me wrong, he had his ups and downs, absolutely. I suppose, I learned I was, even though I was the girl in the family, I've got two brothers, I'm the youngest. I was probably the one who went to work with my dad the most. You know what I mean? I was the one who was on the old building sites. When I was younger, from when I could type, I was a secretary, I'd do the invoices. I would take the phone calls to make the appointments to the visits. So I was working in his business as opposed to helping him. So probably was like 13, 14 onwards doing, bits and pieces. So I suppose not realizing it, I had that mindset of, oh, well, he's got a business. So I think that made me not be fearful of setting up a
Yeah.
business. As a leader, in terms of, a woman in leadership, I think, like I said, they taught me to be, I'm quite strong-willed. Dominate, you probably know this.
Yeah, I
I
do.
am not. I am not afraid, in a very polite way, of course, but I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to speak my truth, to speak up, even in challenging times. I try to be also a very supportive person, because like I say, my parents were very supportive, in
Supportive.
terms of making sure. They were really, a lot of Caribbean parents were very strict. Mine was
Mm.
strict in one way, but actually for quite older parents, because I've got like a brother who's 14 years older than me. I was like
Oh,
the
okay.
mistake that happened years later. But
You
anyway,
were the baby.
so they were quite laid back in some ways. So as long as I did the work, they were
Yeah.
all right. If a teacher said, "Oh, Natasha didn't do this or did hard work," and as long as they'd see the grades, were like, "Yeah, forget it." They actually allowed me to have that sense of fun, which I know a lot of other Caribbean parents would be like, "Yeah."
Didn't.
They were quite laid back about that. 'Cause I think they were a bit like that in their school time. But as long as I did the work, as long as I did okay in my schoolwork, which I did, they were absolutely fine. But it was very much about, even lessons. And we've probably had a conversation. We've both got young boys as well.
Yeah.
In the fact that they tell you those life lessons, you don't realise they're giving you life lessons, but they're
True.
teaching you those life lessons as you go along. Like I said, I will always speak up. My parents are both very strong-willed characters, and they always stuck up, fought for just or injustice, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
there were always ones who would speak up, but at the same time, they're all supportive. Always had, my mum and dad like helped bring up other kids. There's people who, are cool cousins, but they're not. They're just
Yeah.
they are friends of family, and they'll go, oh, it was your dad who taught me this. It was your mum who taught me that. So we all had what was it? Takes a village to raise a child, and all
True.
that. So
True.
they definitely had that nurturing part. But I think it was the fact that one, my dad had his own business, so I thought it was a natural thing. I didn't really think it is. I didn't. To be fair, I probably went in without thinking of all the risks. And I think because they all the way through my life, they would try to teach me and tell me ways to navigate. Again, at the time, I didn't think they were, and they were, navigating situations. Like I saw my dad in business go ups and downs and have to deal with things and having conversation with clients and customers, that sort of stuff. My mum was a nurse, but also, there's different things that she went through. So I think it's it's how they brought us up. They sacrificed a lot, Not everybody, my mum and dad, even though my dad had a business, it was quite a small business, an empire. And, they put us through private school, which,
Mm.
for some people, they may have put their money elsewhere.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I think it's
For
money
you,
well spent.
I am sure they do.
I'll have to ask them, is it money well spent?
Uh,
And so, they valued education. They valued
Education.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, me trying. And I actually did go to a girls' school, funny enough. So I went to a convent, Dominic.
Ooh,
Um,
wow.
and yeah, I know. And so already they were showing then, my dad sacrificed a lot, in the building trade back in, it might be in the 80s or 90s. It sort of went, went bust, not bust, but it was issues. But they made their way to make sure that I still stayed in school, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, education was very important for them. So that was one of the other drivers. They made sure that they did that for me, which, they didn't have to. And don't get
Yeah.
me wrong,
Yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with state school, of course. But they came over from the Caribbean, they saw the challenges. They thought, what can I do
Let's
to
give
give my
them an edge.
children? Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about the sacrifices that they have made.
Yeah.
What are some of the sacrifices that you've had to make on your leadership journey?
I think sacrifices, if I talk about couple, I suppose if I talk about one side family and the other side actually in the role. So in leadership, obviously, if you have children, you're out of the
Mm.
workplace. You miss out on opportunities. Maybe you miss out on, because obviously, we want to take that lovely time off to bond and have your children. And
Yeah.
after I had my child, from then on, I've sort of done flexible working. So
Yeah.
I've never done. Even though people who know me now work all hours under the sun, but flexibly. So even when I
Yeah.
had my child and I was in a working for somebody else rather than myself. Went down to 4 days, and lots of things that I did try to be flexible and adapt and try and not juggle the two, but, do both. In the workplace, I think as a woman, and as a black woman, I've often been in that situation where I was often the only black senior manager in the room. And luckily, and I often had, managers' roles from an early age. I mean, I was like an area manager when I was in my 20s. I always was not fortunate, I worked for it, but I always managed to get, senior roles from my 20s on upwards, really. But I found that sometimes, when you're the only woman in the room, let alone a black woman in the room, I talk about it when I talk about microaggressions and micro behavior, those sort of things. I've been that person. You think you're the one that's being not acknowledged. You're the one who's being perceived as not as intelligent. You're perceived, and I just think, and I never forget this one. And I forget I was a director for a charity, a national charity, and I was one of the regional directors. And I never forget, I was going to a meeting, and it was a trustee who was on the national organisation. He said to me, "Oh, Tasha, you're going to have to change if you want to stay in management or go up in management." Because people who know me have a laugh and a joke, and I went, "I don't think so." But the fact that somebody outwardly said that, and people see if you're somebody who you know me, I work hard, but I like to have fun and like to, be jovial. That's just the way I am. Doesn't take away the intelligence, the hard work, and everything else. But some people do perceive that as, less intelligent, etc. So I think that happened. I'd often be the person in the room that was always acknowledged. I was sometimes the person, like I said, that person said outright. And when he said that, I thought, interesting. I wonder how many other people are thinking that. But to say you can't have that personality and be in management, you need to change. And as I said, I don't think so. But yes, I think definitely. There's so many studies, isn't there, that show about black women. The challenges that black women face. And I remember there's somebody that you may or may not know that works for Diversity Matters, and she always says, it's not a glass ceiling, it's a concrete ceiling. And I think that sometimes it is really hard. People don't understand if you're not got the lived experience, and a lot of the work I do when we do training talk about lived experience. And if you haven't walked in the shoes of a black woman, you are not going to fully understand the day-to-day
challenges.
Challenging. And don't get me wrong, I love my life, I love my job, I love what I do. No regrets in absolutely anything in my career today. And my career has been, I've done okay, but it's not. I've never, considering my parents, put the money in, God bless them. I never was like, I'm going to be a director. I always just did things I enjoyed. I just thought, that looks like a nice interest job. I'm going to do that. That looks. I've always done things I'm passionate about rather than financially. Because my first early career was a lot working in the charity sector, in the voluntary sector. So I was always did things I loved. But I think for the challenges, it's not always being recognised, not not being seen in the room, being overlooked, in terms of what your ability is, you can do. But I think you've just got to keep fighting through that, because that is the life, I would say, of a black woman, sadly. And people might be going, "Oh, no. But, I was, I've got, like yourself, I'm sure you have got, women around you who are also maybe African, Caribbean and other, racialized communities. And they would probably say the same thing because of the perceptions and the challenges that people have about you. Even we were joking earlier before we started about our hair and things like that. It took me to, am I in my 50s? Forgot how old I am now. To actually
don't look a day over 25.
Oh, thank you, darling. But it took me into my 50s to say I'm going to have natural hair. And I said to myself, that I am a cop. So why did it take me that long? But up until then, I probably thought, oh, you know what? It might not be accepted.
Might look appropriate. Yeah.
Yes. And I think to myself, that's probably one of the only things I would change, and I think that time comes with a lot of things, isn't it? But really, I definitely, probably in my 40s, but nowhere there before that would I've had seen, because this whole thing about even how we look is challenged.
Yeah.
It's not seen as professional. It's not seen as, relevant to the workplace. You should have, more European looking hair and things like
Hmm.
that. So yeah, I found that when I came into my 50s, even thought, no, I'm doing what I want even more so.
Now, Tash, you are a huge advocate for women, um, and for, I mean, specifically Black women. But what do you think, apart from your own personal struggles? You mentioned your mom, and that your mom, um, she clearly was passionate about caring for
Yes.
others. But do you think that there was anything about her own lived experiences that deterred her from pushing towards that leadership mark?
I don't know. Knowing her, actually, no, because if anybody knows my mum, she's very tenacious, very strong-willed. Add me times 10, and that is
Right.
her. So I'm like a timid version. So you
Wow,
know,
Tash.
I used to go to the doctor, nurse school. I'm not. Wouldn't mess with your mum. Do you know what I mean? She is. That is her. She
Right.
see it as it's and this is old school. My mum's in her 80s now, everyone. She see it as, I don't want to get involved in the management and pen pushing. I want to be at the heart and the
Right.
care of the
Yeah.
patients. And so no, I think she did make that choice. No, I
Yeah.
know she made that choice, because
Yeah.
that is just her through and through. Even now in her 80s, she's there running around after everybody when she should be resting. So I think, and don't get me wrong, in that time as well, she would have had challenges if she would have aimed to go for that. But I've never heard her say, I wish I had. I don't, no,
Oh,
not at
yeah.
all. But she was well aware of other people who might have gone through that journey and the challenges they would have had. But she's just that person where that's at heart of everything she does. She just wants to do the support and the care, rather than a role where it's mainly, strategically, or office, in an office or
Yes.
that sort of thing. I mean, I know she'd be really good at it, but she'd rather be, she'd be
Focus.
there as an advocate. Leadership would go to her in terms of advice. She'd happily give advice and information to help, patient
Yeah.
care. But she was very much about the people.
Right. And so what's been your driver for being an advocate for women and specifically Black women?
And it's funny you say that, because I don't think I've done it, not purposefully, that's the wrong word. I didn't set out to. I think
Right.
I'm very much about, if I see talent and I see good people around me that have got brilliant skills, and I want to support and drive them. Do you know what I mean? So, anybody who looks on, I do laugh. And we talk about this, I talk about this in the assets like training. You look at diverse matters team, there are a lot of Black women. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so it wasn't intention like, but I think I know the challenges myself. So I don't,
Mhm.
I support people who are from all nationalities and races and whatever gender, but I just like, at the end of the day, there's nothing better than elevating people, because the challenges they have gone through. You know that we're talking about Black women in leadership. Any Black women who've gone into leadership, that you've had a similar path and challenge that they have had. So
Yeah.
you understand it. There's nothing better. I always did a post on LinkedIn actually yesterday about being a small business owner. But the fact of having people who have gone through similar things as you
Mm.
understand. You don't even have to say, in a way, you understand each other. So I think for me, I mean, I've always been an advocate for the Black community. In my 20, in my 20s, I worked in an African Caribbean project, and I ran
Right.
mentoring programs for Black and mixed race children. I also, again, similar time in my 20s, was the chair of my Caribbean association, my local Caribbean
Okay.
association.
In
And
your
again,
twenties.
I know, I absolutely, when I think back and think, how did I do that? Honestly, good job I crammed it all in before I had a child. But yeah, I was in my 20s. Yeah, it was in my 20s, and I was,
Wow.
oh yeah, I was probably about 27-ish. I have to look at my LinkedIn. But yeah, and I was the chair, and that was, loved it, but challenging and interesting. And anybody works in a
Hmm.
community organisation. So I think, and again, before me, my parents were involved in some, in
Yes.
one way in the Caribbean Association, or even if they weren't fully involved, they'd support it. Like, people would come to my dad if they want a new building, he'd go along and help, and see what's right,
Yeah.
see what's what. And so again, as you know, if you, when parents came, any parents who came here, they had to be unified to get on. You had people sharing rooms, sharing houses, didn't you? And
Sure.
trying to support each other. And I think because was brought up with that, trying to support each, support people and support each other, I think I carried it on. Even I need to reactivate it. But my son's school, I was running
Mm.
a black girls group, which I need to get back up. We've had a bit of a break, but we're going. So to me, I mean, working with the children, running the mentoring scheme was absolutely one of the best jobs I've had because young people need role models, and young Black,
Yeah.
African, Caribbean, mixed race children need role models, like any child. But the fact of having somebody who looks like
Looks
them,
like
has an
them.
understanding of them, etc., etc. So I think because I've always had those, like I said, a lot of my career was before, to go into the world and working for myself, was supporting and working with, African Caribbean communities. So I sort of, I suppose, have carried it on, and that's why, I'm passionate about it because I'm well aware of the challenges what
Yeah.
we face on a day to day.
Yeah. And how I was just listening to you talk about mentoring. How can because I often talk to, I want to say young people, but
Yeah,
all ages, and
yeah,
they struggle to find um, avenues to
yeah,
get mentors, to be mentors.
yeah.
What sort of advice would you give in terms of mentorship?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I always said, and I may still do it, so hold me to it. I would love to set up mentoring programs again
Right.
because they are so needed. There is less funding for them now. There's less opportunities for them
Mm,
now. I mean, the project I had, I mean, I left and somebody else carried it on after me, but the funding went, those sort of things. It's so sad that the funding, the funding opportunity, the funding went.
yeah.
And the children, I mean, it's really funny because I think, again, I was only in my 20s in that job. And some of the children might have been like only 10 years younger than me if they were, because we work with children from primary,
Yeah.
secondary, even up to college. And they're actually not that much, a lot of them have got children older than me, my child. And it's really, and the fact that they remember, I mean, I'll talk about children, then I talk about adult mentoring because both are really important. But even as children, they'll say, Tash, remember when we did this? We did things about black achievers, being black, being mixed race, all sort of things. And you do it because you're passionate about it. But they remember every single thing. And amount of them have said to me, oh, Tash, remember we did that? Remember you told us about this and I remember what you did.
Mm,
I even worked, my very first job from leaving university was, I was a residential social worker, a residential
okay.
childcare officer in a behavioural school for boys. And even then, I supported everybody, but the boys, particularly the black boys who were there, I'd take them to things around Black history. I'd do cooking with them, so that they, knew the
Mm,
heritage, because sometimes they didn't always have the role model in there. But that is so sad those things are going, but it's on my agenda at some point to try and do something around that. But as an
yeah.
adult as well, like I didn't really have anybody. I came along around people. There's nobody I was like, so I think if you're able to be a mentor or you're
Yeah.
willing to be a mentor, let people know, let people be aware, whether it's on your LinkedIn profile, happy to help. Because people sometimes will contact me and say, can you give me some advice? And that's fine, I'll do that. But
Yeah.
mainly probably, and I probably need to do it myself, I'm giving this advice, be more explicit about what you want to do and support. And I do know, I
Yeah.
was talking to somebody this week who works in sort of around Black mental health and well-being. And she said, I really want to set up something around, a forum, a community
Yeah.
around, being Black and mental health issues. And I think that it'd be great if there was more of those around because actually, and there may be out there, but I don't know that many. There's probably missing a trick, really.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, what might be a great idea, as when you do that little blurb under your name on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Maybe one of the things you people talk, that's it. There's a thing that says open for work. But you could just put open to be a mentor or
yeah,
open because
yeah,
it kind of starts a conversation
yeah,
and people feel that you're open
yeah.
to them
I mean,
reaching out.
yeah, I mean, I would love to do it like to be a mentor or support is perfect, but even like a formal mentoring program would be so good, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
And I think that'd be something that I would love to do in the future. And I'm sure other people, there might be ones that are around that I'm not aware of, but I
yeah,
think, there's nothing better than, the whole uplifting of people supporting each other and
yeah,
bringing each other up, not doing the whole, people talk about women getting into leadership and then bringing up the ladder with them and not actually helping anybody along the way. And I will always try, in when I've developed my business, as you know, I've always tried to bring people in that I know that are
yeah.
good but also talented, but also, you know I guess again I may have had understand the challenges of being underrepresented, for example.
And I think even beyond that, what your organization, what Diverse Matters, what you do is allow specifically individuals with caring responsibilities flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Flexibility to do what they're passionate about, but
Yeah,
not within the confines of a nine to
yeah,
five or an 8 to 4
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
arrangement. And that was one of the things that I was really impressed with, that level of flexibility and the, dare I say, autonomy
yeah,
to to be your own boss,
yeah,
because
yeah.
yeah, you're working
No,
under an
definitely.
umbrella.
And I think I've worked at different organisations, and I've been a paid employee and I've been a consultant.
Yeah,
And I remember thinking, right, I'm not going to do that. And I remember thinking, I want to treat my, whether an employee or an associate or a consultant, I want to treat you how I wanted to be treated when I was a consultant. So, whether making sure the pay is good, making sure the
yeah,
support's in place, those sort of things, because I know when I was a consultant, sometimes I'd be like, oh, why is that happening? I'm not, and I always vowed, I'm the sort of person who would probably lose money because I was making sure other people got that. You know what I mean? And because I'm
yeah,
like, wow, I know what it was like being on the other end of things sometimes. So for me,
yeah.
I want to be the employer that
Of choice.
I would want to work for.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So much sense. So my last question is around in the future. So what are the changes that you would like to see and experience from the perspective of women in leadership? So given all that you have experienced, but also done to support women in leadership, what's the change that you want to see?
I would love for more people who are not from a racialized community or not, I wouldn't say not women, but I would like to see more people recognize the challenges that we go through. I sometimes think, oh my gosh, if I have to go into another room, and that's what I do, to be fair, because I love it really. But if I have to go to another room and try to get them to understand the challenging that I'm facing on a day to day, we would be a lot better off. So
Yeah,
sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of the time when I do training, I do an exercise, and we talk about lived experiences and advantage and privilege. And honestly, every time I do it, the amount of people have gone, I never really thought about that.
never thought about that.
I've never had to think about that. I've never really thought about how it's much harder for somebody else who doesn't look like me. And so that whole thing, it'd be great if more people understood it, because what I find quite saddening is when you go onto any social media sort of
Mm.
channel and there's somebody positive talking about any aspect of inclusion. So it could be race, it could be gender, could be trans issues, could be LGBT, could be disability, whatever. And the
Mm.
amount of times where something really good has been written about support, inclusion, the amount of people who are saying this is nonsense, this is woke, all these things, and you think, oh, what world are we in now? It's shocking. And even,
Yeah.
in the world it is today, both in the UK and both globally, more people are on that right side of not understanding different lived experience and underrepresentation. And they're not, they're anti the
Yeah.
work that I do, for example. So I would just love more people to get an understanding so it's not as challenging for others. And I must say as well, I must talk about there are lots of good people out there as well. There are lots of
Yeah.
really good, not people who aren't from a racialized community, a lot of white men, a lot of women, other people from all walks of life who are really good at driving and championing black women. I love it when I go to a meeting and somebody says, I know I've got an advantage and privilege, and I know I'm here to support other people. And I love
Yeah.
that. So I don't want to take away, because there are some people that are absolutely brilliant at understanding. But if I would just wish I'd go into more places, open more doors, and they'd go, yeah, I get it, rather than them having a little light bulb moment and going, oh, I've really not considered this. It's bad enough for women as a whole and the challenges you face in the
You
workplace.
add the
The,
race
the
on that.
exactly the pay
Yeah.
gap. Like you say, add a layer of race on top of that. Add even sometimes I show a video around privilege on YouTube. The one you do is takes force. If
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
both parents, and at the back of it, the one at the back is a black gay woman.
Mm.
So at the back, because of bias, race, I'm at the back
All the
because
intersectionality. Yeah.
absolutely. So people
Yeah.
need to delve into that and understand the challenges for all different people from, and look at that intersection of, whether it's race, age, disability, as we get older. Again, black women are also, more likely exposed to more challenges, let alone, at our age now. So yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be great if other people had a great understanding. So if anyone's listening and thinks, oh, what should do? Go out there and educate. I always say to people, go there and educate yourself. There is absolutely so much information out there now about all aspects of underrepresentation and challenge and different communities. Whether it's, like I said, race we're talking about today, the history, even history. I did a really good
Yeah.
session with somebody the day, and they don't usually ask for this. It was around engaging and working with African Caribbean communities, and even that they were like educated. Well, I didn't know that. Just it's when I say it's there to be seen. So take
Yeah.
time out to sort of, is it Maya Angelou says, better, you do better. So
Yeah.
take that information in and learn from
And run
those.
with it.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was like as you mentioned that, I remember seeing a campaign that was targeted towards helping the Caribbean men specifically
yeah.
to get tested for diabetes.
Oh
And
yeah,
what they did was they set up dominoes games and cards
brilliant.
game, yeah, so that they would encourage the conversation.
Absolutely.
And yeah, sometimes you just need to understand the history,
Yeah.
um,
And it's
and
not
lean
always one
into.
size fits all, is it? It's like, what can we do to engage? And people, this is my bugbear, people aren't hard to reach. When people use that
True.
term, I'm like rolling my eyes. What are you going to do to actually connect with these people? They're not hard to reach because you just probably tried once and you tried the wrong way. Think a little bit differently, people.
Yeah. And Tash, if
Yeah.
you had to tell young Natasha,
Yeah.
um, on this career, this pathway that you've taken, anything, what would you say to her?
Continue to speak up, because even though I think I have spoken up on most occasions, probably when I was younger, I
Mm,
didn't do it as much. So get your voice heard. Don't be afraid to speak up. Obviously, do it in a professional and a positive way. Um, and if you feel you're not being heard, or you are being that person in the meeting that's being seen as less knowledgeable, less aware, make that known and have a
yeah,
conversation. Find a ally if you feel it's not comfortable to do it yourself, and get that addressed. That's probably the
yeah.
only thing.
Oh, amazing. Tash, I cannot thank you enough.
No
Thank you, thank
problem.
you, thank you.